Man, I thought Sarah and I were one of those couples you read about. The ones where, even after years together, that stupid little spark is still there. You know, the cheesy stuff rom-coms make you believe in? Yeah, I was a total sucker for it. We were the sickeningly sweet high school pair who never grew out of that goofy stage where you can't keep your hands off each other. But lately, call it a gut feeling or whatever, but her energy had shifted. It started subtly enough. Work trips popped up out of nowhere, stretching longer and longer. Date nights, more like canceled nights, some lame excuse about a deadline or needing extra sleep. I tried to brush it off, but that flicker of doubt just wouldn't go away. And then, Christ, it still makes my stomach twist. I saw this smudge of lipstick on my coffee mug. Bright red, not Sarah's soft pink. My mind raced a coworker's makeup smudge, something from a night out with her girlfriends. I didn't say a damn word, just shoved it to the back of my mind. Cowardly? Yeah, absolutely. But the fantasy of our perfect little bubble was so much easier to cling to than the nagging dread in my chest. Then it came. The dreaded. We need to talk. You know when they say that line, it's never about the weather forecast. She hit me with a, I'm not happy anymore, bomb, and honestly, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was blindsided. Where the hell did this come from? I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. The words wouldn't come out. Nothing. I just sat there, frozen. No tears, no screaming, nothing. Like someone had flicked my off switch, and all that was left was this empty buzzing inside. So, she goes from, I'm not happy, to shacked up with some meathead in under a week. Jake. Remember that name? The douchebag from the gym. The guy who'd smirk at me whenever I was stuck on a treadmill beside him, all ricked and smug. Turns out it wasn't just my paranoia. He'd been scoping out Sarah, and now they were playing house. I didn't even know the guy's damn last name. Just this looming image of muscle-bound smugness invading what was left of my life. My apartment, the one we decorated together with all those stupid inspirational quotes Sarah loved, was now this cavern of silence. Each throw pillow, each framed photo, felt like a mockery. I swore those damn, live, laugh, love, signs were flashing at me in neon, taunting me with my spectacular failure. So I did what any pathetic, heartbroken loser does. Worked myself to the bone, ordered enough greasy Chinese to clog an artery, and binged reruns of Friends till the laughter tracks sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Pathetic, you bet. I knew I was circling the drain, and something rotten inside me wanted to go down screaming. I started hitting the gym too, not for any self-improvement crap, but out of some twisted need for revenge. Every pound I lifted was pure spite. I'd fantasize about crashing their cozy little world, exposing her for the liar she was, and giving Jake a taste of his own smug medicine. One night, after way too much cheap whiskey, I found myself outside their place. What was I even doing there? Spying on my own failed life? Torturing myself? Probably a bit of both. Seeing them together, laughing on the balcony, his hand resting way too casually on her hip, it wasn't just heartbreak anymore. White-hot rage sliced through me, the kind that makes you want to do something stupid, something violent. I could feel my nails digging into my palms, leaving little crescent moon scars. Something had snapped inside me. It wasn't just about her leaving. It was this gnawing fear that I was dissolving into nothingness, a pathetic ghost haunting his own life. That night, I vowed to stop being a victim, but whether that meant clawing my way back to sanity or embracing the darkness, I couldn't say. Look, I'm not proud of what I did next. Hell, I barely even recognized the guy the first was back then, but being replaced by some gym bro was bad enough. Watching my life fade into this pathetic punchline was unbearable. So, yeah, I stooped to stalker level. Figured their happy little bubble revolved around that pretentious gym where Jake was basically king of the squad rack. If I was going to witness my own misery, might as well go down in flames, right? The gym reeked of sweat and overpriced protein shakes, just as I imagined. Took me all of 5 minutes to spot them, sickeningly perfect in their matching workout gear. Sarah was actually laughing, her real laugh, the kind that warmed me from the inside out, the one I thought was gone forever. I hadn't seen that genuine spark of joy in her eyes for months, and now it was aimed at this human billboard for testosterone. Jake was exactly what I feared. A walking cliché of bulging biceps and smarmy charm. He had his hand on her shoulder, then her waist, then, well, let's just say I was surprised they didn't get kicked out for public indecency. That familiar knot of anger twisted in my gut, but this time with a bitter, acidic edge. It should have shattered me, seeing them like that. It should have confirmed every nasty assumption my brain had cooked up in my lonely echo chamber of an apartment. But somehow, it sparked something else. Not another breakdown, but a cold, calculating fury. I couldn't just let this play out, them winning and me reduced to a sad, forgotten footnote in Sarah's life. I would make them see, make them pay somehow. The exact how wasn't clear at that moment, just the certainty that I wasn't disappearing without a fight. Walking out of the gym, I felt almost lighter. My old self would have crumbled. This new, broken version of me? He was just getting started. Common sense screamed at me to get the hell out of there. I should have walked away from the gym and the whole sorry spectacle that was once my life. But instead, some masochistic force held me there, transfixed. I told myself it was research for the war I'd unwittingly been drafted into. Knowing your enemy, playing the strategist, all that diluted crap. Truth is, I was addicted to my own pain. Like picking at a scab even though you know it'll only bleed and scar worse. They'd moved to a bench by the weight racks, still nauseatingly touchy-feely but radiating a new kind of tension. Their smiles were gone, replaced by furrowed brows and worried glances. Jake, usually Mr. Cocky McMuscles, kept shifting uncomfortably, checking over his shoulder. Sarah, my joyful and carefree Sarah, had this tightness around her eyes I hadn't seen in years, something desperate and strained beneath the forced smiles. This wasn't just lovey-dovey post-workout bliss. Something was seriously off. Straining to hear, I caught fragments. Words like bills, deadline, account, sent a surge of adrenaline through me. My pulse quickened. Money. Sarah and I had always been open about finances. When we got married, I started handling her taxes and investments, just to help out. Back when I thought love was enough, it felt good to use my accountant skills for someone other than soul-sucking corporate clients. Now, though, it felt more like a loaded weapon in my hands. My brain raced. Were they in debt because of some secret, lavish lifestyle Sarah had hidden from me? Extravagant gifts I unknowingly funded? Weekend getaways at my expense? It could explain the sudden change, the desperation I saw before me. But that same cynicism warned me I could be way off base, that this was some different kind of crisis I was ill-equipped to understand. Part of me, the still sane part deep down, screamed at me to forget it, to walk away. But that twisted, vengeful part? It latched onto this mystery like a starved dog with a bone. Maybe, just maybe, there was a flaw in their perfect little facade. A thread I could pull it, unravel their secrets, and use against them. That spark of hope, however toxic and self-destructive, was enough to keep me glued to that gym floor, waiting anxiously for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place. That conversation at the gym gnawed at me for days. Every time I thought of Sarah's worried face, of Jake's uncharacteristic nervousness, my gut twisted with a confusing mix of anger and curiosity. What was going on? It wouldn't leave me alone, festering like an open wound in my already fractured life. The logical part of me, what little of it was left, kept saying this was none of my business. That invading Sarah's privacy, even out of spite, made me no better than her. But the voice of betrayal hissed louder. I'd always handled her finances ever since that first year of college when she flunked her accounting class and begged for my help. It turned into this side gig, helping my girl out, simplifying taxes, maxing out those retirement accounts. I'd assumed it was all on the up and up, that we were building our future together. Now, those happy memories were tinged with a sickly shade of doubt. Did I truly know how our money flowed? Or had there been hidden cracks all along? Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Every night, it was the same loop. Images of Sarah and Jake, whispered worries about money, and a gnawing sense of betrayal twisting in my stomach. So, one sleepless, whiskey-fueled night, I did the unthinkable. I opened my old tax software, the one I swore I'd never touch again outside of work. At first, it was purely mindless. A bored accountant poking around familiar columns and spreadsheets. It should have been soothing, the predictable logic of numbers, a world where things added up. But this was Sarah's financial life laid bare, and every number was a potential bombshell. I started with the recent stuff, half expecting to find extravagant spending, coded hints at some secret double life Sarah had kept from me. Nothing, just the usual. Groceries, car stuff, utilities. Boring, normal, heartbreakingly mundane. Disappointed. I was about to shut it all down when I remembered their hushed conversation, that sense of urgency. I dug deeper, backtracking through the previous year, searching for anything unusual. And there it was. A series of small transfers made out to an account I didn't recognize. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. But as the dates flickered past, the amounts grew bolder, the frequency alarming. A cold sweat broke out as I stared at the numbers dancing on the screen. Hidden transfers. Payments siphoned off month after month into some phantom account. A black hole draining away our future. My mind raced. A desperate search for innocent explanations. Maybe an early anniversary present for me. An emergency fund she hadn't told me about. A tax glitch I just didn't understand. But those flimsy excuses shattered against the sheer length of time it had been happening. This wasn't a surprise party or a bookkeeping hiccup, it was calculated dissection. The rage that boiled up wasn't the fiery, impulsive kind from before. This was colder, a sickening sense of violation that seeped into my bones. Sarah, my sweet and honest Sarah, or so I'd idiotically believed. The thought of her lying, calculating, and stealing from me, because that's what it felt like now, made my stomach churn. Every sweet memory, every tender moment felt poisoned in hindsight. Had it all been just a performance, a carefully crafted play with me as the gullible audience of one? Days blurred together in a haze of shock, disbelief, and self-loathing. Had I been blind? A fool so in love that I missed the glaring red flags right in front of my nose? That little voice, the one usually drowned out by misplaced trust, whispered darker possibilities that made my blood run cold. Confronting Sarah seemed like the obvious thing to do. Drag the truth out of her, however ugly. Part of me craved the drama of it, to throw those financial records at her, to watch that sweet mask crack and expose the liar underneath. But then what? Would her tears be real? Could I ever believe a single word out of her mouth again? Another, more calculating part of me whispered to hold back, play dumb for now, dig deeper, gather irrefutable proof of how deep the deception ran. Then I could leverage it, make her hurt like she'd made me hurt. But did I really want to become that guy? Vengeful, manipulative, trading in the currency of betrayal? The war in my head raged on. No matter what I chose, there were no clean endings. Whatever version of Sarah I uncovered, it wouldn't be the woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman I thought I knew. After days of sleepless, agonizing deliberation, fueled by equal parts whiskey and rage, I made my move. The smart part of my brain might have won out eventually, but those agonizing nights had worn me down to the raw nerve. I didn't want justice or some elaborate revenge scheme. I just wanted to lash out, make them feel a fraction of the blind-sided misery I'd been living with. So, armed with a tube of Sarah's brightest red lipstick, the one she'd never worn around me, always saying it was too much, I ventured back into the shadows. Jake's obnoxious sports car was parked in its usual spot outside their love nest. With shaking hands, I scrawled 2 words across the windshield. I know. It was petty, pathetic, a move straight out of a B-rated revenge flick. But in that moment, as that vibrant red slashed across the pristine glass, a wave of twisted satisfaction washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt the tiniest flicker of control. It wasn't much, but in my fractured state, clinging to that pathetic illusion of power was just enough to get me through the night. As you might imagine, things escalated quickly from there. The next morning, my phone blew up with cryptic texts from an unknown number, filled with rage and unprintable insults. Jake had predictably lost his damn mind. Apparently, lipstick vandalism was enough to send his carefully balanced world crashing down. I imagined him foaming at the mouth, spitting accusations at Sarah, their unbreakable bond, dissolving faster than cheap hair dye. The fallout was exactly what I'd hoped for. Their picture-perfect romance was tainted, their bubble of smug happiness punctured by suspicion. Rumors spread like wildfire through the gym, through every tight-knit group Sarah and I used to be part of. Each sideways glance, every whispered comment must have felt like a knife twisting in Sarah's gut. The vengeful part of me savored the chaos I'd inflicted. I knew this wouldn't fix anything, that I was just digging myself deeper into a pit of self-destruction. But after being kicked to the ground, watching them waltz off into my old life, there was a twisted comfort in knowing I could still trip them up, even if it meant getting my own hands dirty along the way. A pang of guilt stabbed at me the next day as I watched the fallout of my childish act unfurl. Seeing their relationship crumble did bring that sick sense of satisfaction, but a gnawing unease lingered. Sarah had hurt me, betrayed me, but destroying her new life didn't heal my own wounds. If anything, it made me feel smaller. This sense of guilt pushed me back into her finances, a desperate attempt to validate my rage. Surely there had to be something proving she was just a heartless gold digger, a justification for my petty revenge. Instead, I stumbled across the cold, hard truth. The transfers weren't going to some unknown lover or shady investment scheme. They were routed to a facility and expensive, top-tier rehabilitation clinic. Not just anywhere, but one back in Sarah's hometown. A place hours away, the place where her close-knit family still lived. The realization hit me with crushing force, shattering my carefully constructed narrative of her betrayal. Had addiction, that shadowed beast, crept back into her life while I was obliviously wrapped up in our own little world? Were there whispers of trouble I'd ignored, desperate pleas swallowed by late-night work excuses and carefully practiced smiles? Or worse, was I so self-absorbed, so consumed by my own hurt, that I completely overlooked a family member, a brother, sister, maybe a parent, spiraling into crisis? Sarah, burdened by the devastating secret, forced to play this twisted double life. Shame flooded through me, burning away the righteous anger I'd clung to. The world shifted on its axis. I'd focused all my hatred on Jake, this shallow caricature of a man, while the real villain might be a silent battle Sarah fought alone. Those hidden accounts, the frantic worry on her face, was it all an act of love rather than cold deception? Every assumption I'd made, every vengeful fantasy, crumbled like sandcastles against a rising tide of confusion and the desperate need for answers. With those revelations echoing in my mind, and a desperate hope flickering to life, the only choice was to seek the truth face to face. I didn't bother packing. My apartment, once the center of my meticulously planned life, now felt like a hollow shell. All that mattered was finding Sarah, hearing it from her, even if the words cut me to the bone. Hours blurred together as I drove blindly toward her hometown. Each familiar landmark seemed warped, twisted by this new knowledge. The road trick playlist we used to blast on happy weekend getaways turned into a mocking soundtrack to my colossal failure as a husband, as a basic human being. My stomach was a knot of regret, fear, and the faintest tendril of fragile hope. Would she even want to see me? Was there anything left after the pain I'd caused with my accusations, my public humiliation of her? The rehab, a sprawling, intimidating complex set back amidst manicured lawns, was every bit as expensive as it looked online. Luxury and desperation existing side by side. A stark reminder of the battles fought in silence. A quick question at reception, and there I was. The pristine hallway seemed to stretch on forever, my footsteps echoing like a death march. Every step brought me closer to Sarah, and the potential final blow that would shatter what remained of my broken heart. She was on a sun-drenched balcony, a shadow of the vibrant woman I'd known. But it was her, no denying it. A wave of relief so sharp it was almost painful surged through me. Before I could even knock, her head wicked around, those familiar eyes locking onto mine. There was shock, disbelief, and yes, a flash of something akin to rage. I opened my mouth to apologize, to somehow explain this tangled mess, but she was the first to speak. How could you? Her voice cracked, raw with an anguish that mirrored my own. It hung in the air between us, echoing in the deafening silence. What I told her next spilled out in a torrent of desperate honesty. My discovery of the hidden money, the poisonous assumptions, the vindictive act of vandalism. It all came tumbling out in a rush. And then, the revelation of why I was there. Why I'd driven like a maniac through the night to find her. Turns out, the love story wasn't over. Just twisted so far out of shape it was unrecognizable. Her secret wasn't a new lover, but her little brother. Years of battling addiction, a relapse, and a family willing to sacrifice everything to save him. Sarah, my sweet Sarah, had been the one holding it all together, bearing the financial and emotional weight with quiet strength. Her words painted a picture of desperation and fierce familial love. It was a heartbreaking mirror to my own spiraling self-destruction. Every dollar I'd obsessed over wasn't a sign of her greed, but the lifeline keeping her brother afloat. Each whisper, every anxious glance I'd misinterpreted, was born from the terror of losing him. And Jake. Jake wasn't a romantic escape, but a desperate gamble. She latched onto his financial stability, his flashy surface, hoping to pump enough resources into her secret battle to finally win it. It was a Hail Mary pass, a flawed plan built on the ashes of her own happiness. Shame washed over me in ways. I'd judged her, condemned her, and publicly humiliated her when all along she'd been fighting a silent, lonely war. Every word of apology felt insufficient, a pathetic bandage on a gaping wound. Yet, she listened, not with forgiveness, that would take time, but with understanding dawning in her tear-streaked eyes. My apology wasn't a rehearsed speech, but a raw, agonizing confession. I laid out every poisonous suspicion that festered inside me, the petty acts of revenge, the complete unraveling of the man I thought I was. It was ugly and brutally honest. But in that moment of vulnerability, a bridge began to rebuild. It was fragile, cobbled together from shards of trust, but it was there. When I finally admitted I'd been the one to deface Jake's car, a flicker of amusement danced in her eyes. Not cruel, but the genuine, exasperated kind that couples exchange when one of them does something incredibly stupid. It felt strangely comforting, a tentative reminder of a time when we could be both tender and exasperated within the same breath. Helping her brother wasn't a selfless act of redemption on my part. It was the barest glimmer of decency, an attempt to claw back some shred of respect from the wreckage I'd created. We talked logistics, numbers, what could be salvaged, and where I could slot in without causing more destruction. There was no promise of forgiveness, no miraculous return to our old life. Only this, a willingness to face this new, fractured reality with a shared goal rather than tear each other further apart. As for Jake, turns out, Mr. Perfect wasn't so perfect after all. Once the truth about Sarah's brother and the financial strain she was under surfaced, he bailed faster than you can say. Vows are worthless. It was pathetically predictable, a bitter confirmation of his shallowness. And honestly, Sarah was well rid of him. Life had handed her enough hardship. She didn't need a self-absorbed opportunist